Technical Section 3. Good afternoon to all. We have Dr. V. Amuda, Assistant Professor, Department of English, Women's Christian College, Nagarkoil. It's my pleasure to welcome you, ma'am. I
Okay.
request her to handle the section.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm I'm Dr. Vyamuda, working in the Department of English, Women's Christian College, Nagarkoil. So I'm happy to chair this session, this third technical session, and the participants are Dr. Ruby, guide, research guide, and yes, Raja, whose paper is on psychological analysis of Pecola and Choli in the novel The Bluest Eye. The next person is R. Karthikeyan, who is going to present the paper on digital humanities or dynamic relationship or decoding English literature. And the third candidate is R. Venkatesh, who is going to present the paper on slavery, philosophy, and American literature from the year 1830 to 1860. The fourth one is Uma Mageshwar and Dr. R. Pavitra. The title of the paper is Women Protagonists Striving for Equality in Both Family and Fraternity, as reflected in Toni Morrison's novel. And the fifth one is Manipuri Ras Leela, a historical approach, which is presented by Siram Rajeshwaran Singh. I hope all the participants are here in the session.
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon. This is Karthikeyan.
Yeah. Okay. So shall we start, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, you can start. You can continue, sir. Hello, sir.
Now let us behind the paper presentation. I'm glad to invite the paper presenter R. Karthikeyan, Assistant Professor of English, PAC Assistant in Tirupur. He's going to present paper Digital Humanities Dynamic Relationship or Decoding English Literature.
So shall we have the presentation for about 5 to 7 minutes presentation and last 2 to 3
Sure, ma'am.
minutes for discussion? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So can you see my screen, ma'am? I just shared my screen. Everybody see my screen?
No. Yeah. Now it's seen now.
Okay. So very good afternoon to one and all present here. Actually, it's my pleasure to speak about digital humanities. And in my abstract, what I forwarded, digital humanities, a dynamic relationship, or just decoding English literature. Because in the post-pandemic era, the internet transformed the learning, teaching, and communicating in all sorts, and even the new ideas and thoughts represented through poems, essays, lessons earlier are getting transformed into tweets, comments, and scrolled posts and blogs. And actually, in literature, a new English dialect termed text speak has a silver lining, and we should thank the social media platforms for encouraging that. The new budding writers also, they think shortly on what to write to get the content reached, but they are blocked with restrictions of just scrolls grabbing minimum or no attention at all. So literary writers are no exception from this, and they started to sever their characteristic elements so that the restrictions need to be complied, but it's not happening actually. The quick media interactions submerge the urge of thirsty readers, and it's actually nibbling their intentional reading habits, which really paved the way in the beginning of English literature past. For new education professionals who supports that creativity and imagination should be nurtured. So the tech savvy habitants, they are actually accustomed to search for assignments or 60 words articles like that. So it's actually infiltrating the readers, and they are totally forgetting the beauty of English literature world. And actually, we enjoyed Homer, Sophocles, Virgil, and it was taken over by James Joyce, and more than that, Jane Austen, Emily Dickinson. So I'm going to just have a few points about the full article now. Practices and pedagogies. So actually nowadays the researchers are they are just expanding their scope of research by adding a digital component. So actually the analysis, the data part is there, but the digital humanities is encouraging the live projects, so that makes them think a lot, and they bring out the real potential from the researchers, and the changes which are being made from their works also can be tracked. And it is a great interest to scholars and researchers that media studies, digital media education, and South Asian studies and cultural studies, everything is fully equipped with technology. And even nowadays 5G are there, so it's that much quick in the traditional classrooms getting transformed into digital. It's actually phygital nowadays after the lockdown time. Now we stopped the online classes, but actually what's happening is in the classrooms also the students are encouraged to use the mobile tools, the technology. So it's becoming physical and digital, so it's digital classes. And digital humanities actually supports the collaborative, transdisciplinary, and computationally engaged research, and done in teaching and also publishing. So as you all know that the rhetoric which is addressed mostly through the values. And the next point I would like to clarify here is the new collections of historical or literary artifacts are nowadays publicly available, okay, on the web or in any digital databases, and the material contain more open, it's like an open resource. So digital humanities actually increases the ability for humanists, okay, that's the new term, and humanists to combine the data sets, social media, the sound, web and image archives, and all the English literature data is been transformed to brainstorm the learners. And it's humanities computing or e-humanities, digital humanities, and it's called humanism nowadays. So that's the network topology. So I just giving you a glimpse of the digital humanities pedagogy, and how it's making the scholars meeting place, and how it's getting communicated and collaborated. So even the funding is been happened, it's happening. So the digital infrastructure is wide and it's going to grow in near future. So under the digital societies, so everything is becoming digital. My point is academies. So now they are much more comfortable with the use of this digital humanities across all the disciplines. So it has brought new powers of analysis, comparison, and understanding, more than Bloom's taxonomy, to a range of research areas. So the exemplary, the transformation of digital techniques and methods, they have laid the ground for a golden age of humanities. So we are not going back to the previous centuries, we are going ahead. So that's where the critical interventions and the policy insights of the individuals are being taken into consideration, and the greater diffusion of digital technologies are also applicable to India. So that's my part, and I don't want to elaborate it more. And in the paper, I just explained it more since the time restriction. If anybody has any doubts, I just given my email ID karthikeyan.r@parkscollege.ac.in. I'm happy to discuss more about it. And now, if you have any questions, I am ready to discuss it.
So very interesting topic, sir, and so enriching too. And that's fact. The traditional method of teaching is now replaced by digital method. And because of this pandemic, digital, which was digital method of teaching, which were restricted, which were positive only for the poor schools and colleges, are now distributed to the entire society, entire community. Now it is open to all. Anybody in any village, the students or the teachers, they know to use the digital way of teaching, right? So it's interesting. Is there anybody else wanted to do any clarifications, or you have to ask any questions? It's open. The forum is open for discussion. Anybody? So if there is no question, we'll move on to the next person. Okay. Thank you, sir. It was a good
Okay.
presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for the Cape Common interest, and thanks for making it to present in a Google Meet. And I'm really thankful for the Cape Common interest and Dr. Amutha, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Okay. Shall we move on to the next one? Next candidate? Who is ready to present the next?
Thank you for your presentation. Next, I invite the paper presenter, R. Pavitra, PhD research scholar, and Dr. S. Uma Mageshwari, professor and head St. Peter's Institute of Higher Education and Research, Avadi, Chennai, and their title is Women Protagonists Striving for Equality in Both Family and Fraternity, as reflected in Toni Morrison novel.
Good afternoon. Shall we start the presentation? It can take about 5 to 7 minutes for presentation and last 2 to 3 minutes for discussion.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Good
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, ma'am. This is Pavitra. Shall I share the screen, ma'am?
Yeah. You can. Yes. This is it.
Yes, a very good morning to one and all present here, and good morning, ma'am. So this is Pavitra from St. Peter's University, Chennai. My current topic for presentation is Women Protagonists Striving for Equality in Both Family and Fraternity, as reflected in Toni Morrison novels. So the author chosen for my work is Toni Morrison. About the author's full name is Charlia Albert Woodford, and she was born in 18 February 1931 in US. She was died in 5th August 2019 in Newark, US. She received her undergraduate BA degree in Howard University in 1953, and she received her MA degree in Cornell University in 1953. She was an African American novelist, essayist, children writer, and a professor. And glimpse about the awards and prizes won by Toni Morrison. She has received many awards for her writings. Few of the awards is mentioned here, and she received her honorary doctorate of laws at University of Pennsylvania in 1988, and she received honorary doctorate of letters award in the University of Harvard and the University of Oxford, and she received her Nobel Prize in literature also. And in the year 2013, she received honorary doctorate of literature award by Princeton University. The works written by Toni Morrison are here. The Bluest Eye in the year 1970, Sulla in the year 1973, Song of Solomon in the year 1977, Tor Baby in the year 1981, Beloved in the year 1987, Jazz in the year 1992, Paradise in the year 1997, Love in the year 2003, A Mercy in 2008, and Home in the year 2012. As well as she has written many short stories and non-fictions also. The major themes reflected in all her novels will be gender identity, racial tension, sexism, lustful desire, violence, oppression, slavery, sacrifice, community, and culture. These are the major themes which will be reflected in almost all the novels of Toni Morrison. So the objective of my presentation will be African American literature. Most probably refers to the literature produced by United States by writers of African descent. So the objective of the paper is to present the struggle of women and her necessity to upgrade herself equal to men through the Toni Morrison novels, and also aims to focus on the basic principle to analyze Morrison's female characters by their thoughts, feelings, impressions to reveal certain truths about women's social status in African American fraternity. So most of the African American novels of Toni Morrison will be focused on the protagonists. The protagonists will be the women characters. So the women characters will be suffering just because of social status and also the family conditions. So this is the main objective of my presentation. Focus, all the female characters in the novels of Toni Morrison used to express exactly the impact of life on their personality. Toni Morrison was one of the prominent writers in African American literature whose works replicates the agony of dark women in African American fraternity. So as a dark woman, she grows up with an intense interest in the feminist problems, and her novels hold the key to the meaning of life and position of women in the family as well as in the fraternity. So almost all the novels of Toni Morrison, the women will be a sufferer, and she will be suffering just because of racism, and they are doubly marginalized because as a gender and as well as just because of the race. And inside the family, they have no equality just because of their gender, and even in the society also they are facing the same problem just because of racism. So these are the two aspects of Toni Morrison female characters. So African American literature is addressing the numerous issues of Black American life, especially female and their low positions in American social culture. So all the novels of Toni Morrison evolve around the troubles and tournaments of Black female and deals with the themes of sexism, racism, identity crisis, and gender discrimination. So women protagonists in the novels of Toni Morrison, these are the basic women protagonists in their novels. So Shetty is the protagonist in the novel Beloved, and she was a proud, independent woman. Here, the independent itself indicates that she is not depending on anybody else in the society as well as in the family. She is leading her life independently, who's extremely devoted to her children. And the character Violet, she is the protagonist of the novel Jazz, and she is an orphan raised by a grandmother. So from the childhood, she is suffering. She is suffering of being alone without depending on anybody else, and she has no children. And after several miscarriages, she longs for a child. So here, she is longing for a child as well as for the equality inside the family as well as in the society. And Pecola Breedlove is the protagonist of Bluest High novel, and she's 11 years old girl. She's very sensitive and delicate. She suffers the abuse of her mother, father, and classmates due to her ugliness. So she's suffering because of abuse, not just inside the society. She's suffering because of the abuse as from her own mother itself. So mother, father, and as well as the classmates also is not treating her equally, just because she is not looking good. So she's very feeling inferior complex inside herself. So she's suffering in both the family as well as in the society. So these are the basic example which has taken from Toni Morrison's protagonist. And this is all about my presentation, ma'am.
Presentation, and we all know that Toni Morrison is a great Black American writer who has won the Nobel Prize. And
Yes,
as you said, that the Black women are quite marginalized, not only as women but also as Black women. And
ma'am.
do you think the writers, we have many Black American writers, Black women writers, and do you
Yes,
think
ma'am.
that the writings have tried to upgrade their status? Are they
Yes, ma'am. They
what
are trying
were
to
they successful? Were they successful in upgrading the status of women?
uh, maybe for theoretically they are saying they have been succeeded, but then it is not implemented because there are n number of novels written by Toni Morrison in the various periods. But from 1970 till 2012, there are n number of novels written by Toni Morrison. But in almost all the novels, she has written the same issue facing by the American female protagonists. So there is no upgrade as of now.
from the writing, we could understand that even the writers who write now in the present scenario, they write about how women are suppressed and segregated, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, anybody else? The forum is open for discussion. Anybody has got some questions to ask? Okay, thank you for your presentation. It was a good presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Shall we move on to the next person?
Thank you for your presentation. Next, I invite paper presenter Dr. G. Ruby, Research Supervisor, Government of Arts and Science College, Kumarapalayam, Namakkal District, and S. Raja, PhD Research Scholar in English, Government Arts and Science College, Kumarapalayam, Namakkal, and their title is Psychological Analysis of Pecola and Sholi in the novel The Bluest Eye.
Hello, good morning, madam.
Hello.
Good morning, madam. This is Raja, research scholar, Government Arts and Science College, Kumarapalayam, Namakkal district. I'm going to present a paper. The title: Psychological Analysis of Piccola and Choli in the novel The Bluest Eye. First, I'd like to say about my author, Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison was born February 18, 1931, and died August 5, 2019. Toni Morrison was an African American novelist. Her first novel, The Bluest Eye, was published in 1970. The critically acclaimed Song of Solomon, next work, published in 1977, it's brought her national attention and won the National Book Critics Circle Award. In 1988, Morrison won the Pulitzer Prize for Beloved. In 1987, she was awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1993. So this story, the Below Eye. First, I would like to say about my work, the Below Eye. In short, it's story of a young African American girl named Piccola, who grew up following the Great Depression, and it's set in 1941. The story is about how she is consistently regarded as ugly due to her mannerisms and dark skin. As a result, she develops an inferiority complex, which fuels her desire for the blue eyes. She equates with whiteness. So the literature of slavery, 1946 to 1865, African American life is nothing but a struggle for freedom, equality, and fraternity. Even though American people did not treat the slaves with that human love and dignity. The blacks therefore appealed to the traditional Christian gospel of the universal brotherhood of humanity. Whitley's poetry found the poet's goodness as robust as her politics. She said color is no bar for man's restoration. David Walker wrote a pamphlet for abolition of slavery. James Whitefield's poem American 1853 has this quatrain: America, it's to thee. Though boasted land of liberty, it is thee I raise my song, though land of blood and crime and wrong. Whitefield's perfidy at the hands of America summarized periods of increasingly vocal black outrage of the United States. The grotesque inconsistency between the United States championing of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in its own Declaration of Independence and its sanctioning of the crime of chattel slavery furnished early African American literature with the most enduring theme. American slavery assumed an oppressive status. American racism because of a persistent association of blackness with absence. Some of them argued that the African Americans' physical and cultural difference to an intellectual, spiritual, and moral otherness that slavery. The present work studies in African American literature are like an anthology for writers, works, and trends in African American literature. Toni Morrison is an American essayist, editor, novelist, teacher, and professor emeritus at Princeton University. She was born in Chole, Ardelia, Oxford, February 18, 1931, at Loren, Ohio. In the novel The Blessed Eye, Piccola Breedlove is the protagonist of the novel. She is 11 years old black girl. She feels that she is ugly, who believes that having blue eyes would make her beautiful. She thinks that she wants to learn how to get people to love her. She was cruelly treated by her parents and her life is difficult. Choli Breedlove is her father. Her father always drinks and her mother often beat one another. Whenever her parents are fighting, her brother Sami frequently runs away. Piccola believes that if if she has blue eyes, she would be loved and her life will be transformed. Many times Piccolo's father has tried to burn down his family's house. She always goes to Shirley Temple, that she loves Shirley Temple, who believes that whiteness is beautiful. Piccola feels that she is ugly and black. Her mother Pauline always felt isolated. Pauline encourages her husband Choli's violent behavior. When she is cleaning a white woman's home, she feels alive. It never occurred to either of us that the earth itself might have been I and yielding. We had dropped our seeds in our little plot of black dirt just as Piccolo's father had dropped his seeds in his own plot of black dirt. Our innocence and faith were no more protective than his lust or despair. Piccola is washing dishes. Choli returns home with the mixed motives of tenderness that he rapes her daughter Piccola. She was unconscious on the floor, and her mother Pauline does not believe Piccola's story and beats her. Piccola went to Soford Church and asked her blue eyes. Piccola asked Frida, "How do you get someone to love you?" Second time, Choli rapes Piccola. And she became mad, believing that her wish will be fulfilled and she has a bluest eye. Mr. Henry groups and Choli rapes his daughter Piccola at least twice, maybe more. Piccola was impregnated by her father. The rest of her neighborhood thinks that baby want to live. They sacrifice some money and plant marigold seeds. They believe that if the flowers live, Piccola baby will live. If the flowers refuse to blossom, Piccola's baby dies prematurely. She relates that she and her sister believed that there are no marigolds because Piccola, a slightly older black girl, and she have her father's baby. It was not their own marigold seeds. They did not sprout none of the marigolds in the community. The sisters believed if the seeds would blossom and the Piccola's baby would be safely delivered, there is an emotional connection between Piccola and her baby. And the sisters who worried for them. However, the seeds refused to sprout. The narrator believed that her sisters were right. The narrator states that the sister's innocence, Piccolo's baby, and Piccolo's father all are dead. She concludes by indicating that it would be difficult to explain why these events happened. Piccola thinks how ugly she is. She always begins to think that if her eyes were different, she would be loved by all the people. She begins to pray every night for blue eyes. Geraldine hurts Piccolo's feelings when she throws Piccola out of her house and calls her black as if it to insult her. Mr. Jakobsky degrades her by refusing to touch her hand to take her money. Piccola is psychologically abused by the degrading condition. Had Piccola taken the ugliness that society defined for her and turned it outward, she would not have become society's victim. Piccola tells her friend that now she has blue eyes, but no one looks at her, not even her mother. She asks her friend if her eyes are the very bluest, and her friend reassures her Piccola has an imaginary friend. Piccola worries that someone somewhere may have a bluer than her. She wants to examine everyone's eyes to see if they are bluer than anyone. Her belief in her blue eyes is not enough, and she requires constant reassurance. Piccolo's young mind at the end of the novel does the only thing it can do. It creates an imaginary friend to love and affirm her. The bluest eye. This is this idea of ugliness is conveyed in the character Piccola. Her wishes for blue eyes are the way to escape from the slavery, racism, and from the oppression of the black people. Toni Morrison portrays Piccola's ugly because she was always miserable and how difficult her life in the novel The Bluest Eye. Toni Morrison shows the cruelest way that people were treated them. Piccola were physically and psychologically affected and affected by her father Jolie. Toni Morrison shows that nothing good in Piccola's family. She does not have a perfect family. Toni Morrison especially integrated in the novel to show the stereotypes about the blue-eyed people, to show that all races are beautiful, to convey a story in the closed eye. That's all, man.
Okay, that's a good presentation. And two things, these women, black women,
Ah,
are
yes, ma'am.
not only physically abused but also psychologically,
Yes,
and
yes.
they undergo a lot of psychological trauma, and they are segregated to the core. And your presentation made me to recollect a poem by Shelley, To a Skylark, in which he says, "We look before and after and find for what is not." Because she was
Oh,
the complex in her, as she wanted to get the blue eye, right?
yes, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes. So she was not happy, or she was not satisfied with what she has, but she was fighting for something which she don't have. Okay,
Yes,
and she was
yes,
striving for that. Okay, that is all because of your psychological trauma. I understand from your presentation. It was a good presentation. Now the
yes,
forum is open. You can discuss. Anybody, if you wish to ask any question, yeah, please, you're welcome.
yes. Do you have any clarifications and doubts?
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir. It was a good presentation. Shall we move on to the next candidate?
Yeah, thank you so much for giving this golden opportunity. Thank you so much for
Thank
resource
you.
person and all participants present today.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Next, I invite the paper presenter, Sriram Rajeshwar Singh, PhD Scholar, Department of English at the Assam Royal Global University, Guwahati. He is going to present paper on Manipuri Rash Leela, a historical approach.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Okay, you can
Hello.
start, sir. Okay, you can start, sir.
Okay. Respected panels, good afternoon. Today I will be presenting a paper titled Manipuri Ras Leela, a historical approach. This is a fragment of my PhD research. So I shall start with the introduction. In Vaishnavite tradition of India, the Ras Leela is considered to be the most beautiful depiction of soulful love of Radha and Krishna. It is also known as dance of divine love. Thus, this Raslila is also a popular theme in various dance traditions and theaters across the country. And coming to the Vaishnavite tradition of the state of Manipur, this Raslila has become the face of the Vaishnavite dance tradition. And this is also one of the classical dance form of India. It was created by a devout Vaishnava Maharaj Bhagat Chandra in the year 1779. He created three Ras Leelas, namely Maharas, Basantaras, and Kunjaras. Two more numbers are created by a later king in the early 20th century. They are called Dibaras and Nityaras. So, talking about the characters in Manipuri Ras Leela, they are Govinda, that is Krishna, next Radha, also known as Radhika, and the Sakhis. The Ras Leela of Manipur is inspired mostly from chapter 29 to 33 of the Hindu text Srimad Bhagavat. The objective of my study is to study and trace the pre-Vaishnavite period of Manipur and to study the origin of dance. Next, to study the advent of Hinduism in the valley. And lastly, to study the factors that led to the development of the five Ras Leelas. Before coming directly to the advent of Vaishnavism, it's necessary to discuss the pre-Hindu dance traditions of the state. So, the Chaitara Kumbhaba, which is the royal court chronicle, it records the various events of Manipur from 33 AD till the end of monarchy of the state in the later half of 20th century. Uh, Seven clans form the Manipuri community. The people consider dance and music as the god they worship, and this Manipuri tradition of worshipping their gods through dance and music goes beyond its recorded history. Atiya Guru Shitaba, his son Asiba, he organized a workforce of nine gods and seven goddesses to give a proper shape to the world. The gods, with their hand movements, created solid materials out of nothingness, and the goddesses pressed them down with their feet to make moons of earth. This is the myth which is prevailing in the state of Manipur regarding the origin of dance. So, this is the hand movements of the gods in empty space were known as Nongdai Jagoi, and the footwork of the goddesses to shape the earth is known as Lektai Jagoi. Thus, the union, that is, the Leitai and Nongdai means the dance of the union of heaven and earth. This dance is performed by the priestess and the priest during the Lai Harawa festival of the Meitei people, that is the Manipuri people. Uh, so this Lai Harawa festival is an elaborate indigenous ritualistic festival of the Manipuri people, which goes on for weeks to months depending on regional variations. This line of tradition has been followed smoothly until the coming of Hinduism in the state. Uh, Now we shall discuss the advent of Hinduism in Manipur. Hinduism came to the valley of Manipur in 15th century during the reign of King Kyamba, and he started worshipping Lord Vishnu. So in the book A Short History of Manipur, written by R.K. Jalajit, he states, from his time of his from the time of his reign onwards, we find a new feature in the history of Manipur. It is the immigration of Brahmins in almost every reign, in small batches from all parts of North India. These Brahmins settled in Manipur and they became Manipuris. These Brahmins who settled in the valley of Manipur, they came from various parts of India, which include Orissa, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Tripura, etc., uh, where some of them are well versed with their tradition of worshipping Lord Vishnu. They came with their tradition and books. The reign of King Khagena, that is the next king, he also contributed to the progress of Vaishnavism, and thus Hindu became a symbol of worship in the valley of Manipur. The extreme point of Hinduism came when Pamheiba took over the throne in 1709. He himself was the first to take the Gauriya Vaishnavism. Gauriya Vaishnavism is a sect of Hinduism, basically inspired from the Bengal Vaishnavism. Thus, he spread his religious faith to the people of Manipur, especially in the valley. Another strong movement that paved the way for Gauriya Vaishnavism in the valley is the coming of Vaishnavite theme, dance, and music during Maharaj Garib Niwas. The next king, Maharaj Bhagachandra, who is the successor, he is also known as the Renaissance of Manipuri dance and music. Thus, Maharaj Bhagachandra made Vaishnavism the state religion of Manipur during his reign onwards. So when Burmese invaded Manipur in the 18th century, several Manipuris fled to different parts of Assam, and even the king himself took shelter in the court of the Assam king, Swargadeva Rajeshwar Singh. It is with his expedition the Manipuri king regained his throne. It is said that during his stay at the Assam kingdom, Lord Krishna appeared in his dream and instructed him to carve out a statue of him from a jackfruit tree. So the Lord, and it is also said that the Lord also insisted the king to compose Ras Lila to be dedicated to him. So after regaining his kingdom, the king created seven idols of Lord Krishna, which were carved out of a jackfruit tree. He summoned scholars, Brahmins, and experts of his court and discussed to compose the divine Ras Lila. So, taking accounts of various Hindu texts along with the indigenous traditions of the land, the first Ras Lila of Manipur, that is Maharas, was created in the soil of the land. Two more Ras Lilas were created in the early 20th century. Uh, they are known as Nityaras and Divaras. So till now we have five Ras Lilas. And during the time of creation of Nityaras, there has been a change in the costume. There is a change in the costume, which is called Koktumbi. It was replaced by Japa costume. Koktumbi is it consists of a conical cap and a face covering veil. So this orthodox and conventional costume was removed, and the breast fastening strap, which was worn on the chest to remove the movement of the woman's upper body, was also discarded. Thus, a brand new costume called japa in the decoration of the head of the women was introduced by Princess Sanatombi. Thus, all these changes have taken place. The entire attitude of this new Ras was completely liberal and free from the conservative principle that restricts the women performing the Ras Leela. The history of the historical importance of the Nitya Ras as a communicative performance is indeed a landmark in the checkered history of Ras Leelas, as well as emancipation of women's body in performance. Development of Development and production of Ras Leela still continues even in the mid 20th century. The attitude of this new Ras, that is Divaras, is to break the conventional night performance and perform during daytime. It was also created to have a more secular nature as compared to the conventional and orthodox tradition of the earlier Ras, as it was only exercised by the royalites. The Ras Leela, and in conclusion, the Ras Leela of Manipur has two ways of performing in Manipur. Those performed at the premises of Sri Sri Govind's temple and those performed elsewhere. Various differences in themes, character, and narrative differentiate the five kinds of Manipuri Ras Leela. Religious themes, especially from Vaishnava tradition, interacted with the indigenous Meitei religious practices, tended to produce culturally integrated rituals, performance, and festival. So, one of the most finest products of this interaction is the creation of several Vaishnavite dance forms, which later came to be known as Manipuri classical dance. Thus, Raslila is the finest and the most predominant of various Manipuri classical dances because of its varieties and intricacies. With this, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you.
So it was so informative. Your presentation was so informative, sir. And it
Thank
is
you.
one of the 8 dance forms that is accepted in India, right? It's one of the very
Yes, ma'am.
important,
Yes.
prominent dance forms.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
uniqueness is in
Yes.
the dress, the stiff skirts that they
The
wear
steep
while
circus,
dancing.
yes, which is known as
Yeah,
potloy, yes.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, so it was a good no questions for me to ask. It was so informative, and the forum is open for discussion. If there is anybody willing to ask some questions, you can ask. Anybody wanted any clarifications to be made? So if that is okay, then shall we move on to the last presenter of this session?
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
your
ma'am.
presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Next, I invite the paper presenter or Venkatesh, PhD research scholar, Department of History, Annamalai University, Annamalai Nagar. He is going to present a paper on slavery, philosophy, and American literature 1830 to 1860.
Uh, Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
I'm R. Venkatesh. Uh, I'm very happy to getting this opportunity on international conference on American literature held on the uh, Nesamuni Memorial Christian College, and it's and it gives me the great pleasure to participate the conference. Reiterating that the title I have chosen for this conference is the Slavery, Philosophy, and American Literature in 1813 to 1860. Through this article, I will try to reveal about the that what is the level uh, of literature progress in the various context of the American literature based on the history, and its extend the political and social changes have influence of the literature, and what kind of the impact have that had literature and especially during the Civil War. The study show that on objective it is how the American writers portrayed the slavery in America, their stories and novels, and how they took the various inequalities in America, and their literary contribution and of the society, and the it's mainly focus on this study. Also point out the face the discriminations in the United States, especially slavery time and during the Civil War. Uh, and my research was extended to the especially the author in America, Elder Allan Poe, and Harry Pacher Stowe, and Harmon Melville, kind of that. The slavery crisis to the brought the new inputs of the applicate the intellectual and instant the tragic social experience. Failure of the rational and the breakdown would the culminate the Civil War. Uh, the, thanks for the opportunity to present my paper. Uh, my the my paper enough. Uh, that's over my research.
Okay. Sir, are you doing research in this area, sir? You are the professor. You are from the
No, no,
Department of
no,
History.
no, madam. I'm department from history. I
History.
would interest in the American literature through the slavery time. So I focus on
Oh,
this kind of paper.
so it's quite interesting that you're from the Department of History and you're able to analyze from American
Yeah.
literature.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
because because we have many novels based on America from the historical perspective,
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
historiographic
ma'am.
metafiction. Yeah, many novels were written in the historiographic metafiction. How the facts are rewritten by the writers.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You
So, yes.
okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Anything you have to ask me, sir?
What, ma'am?
No, yeah, yeah.
My
The
my
American literature mainly. Okay, the history rewritten, right? Okay,
yeah.
it was good presentation, sir.